So the other day I was cleaning out my office at home and I came across this label maker. You know the ones I'm talking about. They've got that round thing at the top that you can, and the trigger on the bottom, and you can punch out the letters, and then you can take out your labels and stick them on anything. And so I pulled this thing out and decided that I was going to have a little fun with it, and I punched out the word door and I stuck it on the door. And I punched out the word fridge and I stuck it on the fridge. And I punched out the word clock and I stuck it on the clock. And then I punched out the word cat and, I stuck it on the cat. And then my son came in the room. And as he came in, I was about to punch out the word son when I stopped. Because I suddenly realized that that's not all he is. I mean, yeah, he's my son, but he's also a grandson, and a brother, and an uncle, and a cousin, and a student, and a baseball player, and an artist. And all these things come together in this boy-shaped package to help create who he is. And it was at that point that I realized that the label maker doesn't really work on people, does it? And yet we use it every day, don't we? I mean, all the time people come across our path and we see them and we meet them, and as soon as we do, we pull out that label maker and we punch out a label and we stick it on them. And we think that by doing that, we can completely define who they are. I mean, think of some of the labels that we use. There are labels that aren't that bad. Labels like jock, or smart, beautiful, successful. And then there are the negative labels. Labels like loser, failure, stupid, criminal, addict. And we do this all the time. And by doing it, again, we somehow think that we can completely know everything there is to know about a person. But that's just not possible. The label maker doesn't really work for people, does it? I mean, Jesus inherently knew this, didn't he? I mean, think about all the examples from his life. Jesus meets a tax collector and he doesn't see a tax collector, he sees a person. He doesn't see a prostitute, he sees a woman. He doesn't see a thief on the cross, he sees a man. Jesus had an incredible ability to be able to look beyond the labels and see the person that lived underneath. I have a really good friend named Martha, and we've been friends for a couple of years now. But prior to that, she worked at the coffee shop where I got my coffee every day. And I would come in and I was completely content to see her as the coffee lady, the lady that served me my coffee. And she was completely content to see me as the large single cream, because that's what I ordered every day. And so every day for a number of years, we were just content to see each other with those labels. And then one day I brought my boys in. And suddenly Martha started asking me about my boys. She asked how old they were and what their names were. And in turn, I started asking her if she had any kids. And suddenly, we became more than the labels. Suddenly, Martha became more than just the coffee lady. She became a person. She became a person who was a grandmother and a mother. A person who loved her Vancouver Canucks. And since that time, we've seen each other as more than just labels. And we've become friends because of it. But the label coffee lady was an easy one to take off. It was a relatively easy one for me to get by. But there are other labels that are much harder for us to get rid of. Labels like criminal, or homeless, or addict. And these are labels that we really struggle with. These are labels that really stick, don't they? I mean, if you were to ask people, is it okay for an addict to come to your church? For the most part, we'd say, yeah, sure. They can come to our church. We want them to come. We want them to hear a really good message. And we want them to change their lives. But if you were to ask, could you be friends with an addict? We might get a different answer. It's really difficult for us to be friends with an addict, because it's difficult for us to be able to move past the label and see the person behind it. The label is a barrier that prevents us from entering into real relationship with a real human being. I mean, think about what church is all about. We want to disciple people. We want to be able to encourage people in their walk with Jesus. And at LifeBridge, we believe that a core component of that is relationships. That we can be discipled through teaching, we just can be discipled through listening to a sermon, but without the relationship, the most key component of discipleship is missing. One of LifeBridge's purposes is to teach the church how to drop the label makers, to encourage them to understand what addiction is, what it means, the effects that it has, but above all else, to show people that beneath the label addict, there is a real person. And then to connect those people together in real relationships. Because it's only as we enter into real relationships, relationships of accountability, relationships of encouragement, relationships of significance, that lives will be transformed. Or not only them, but us. That is what LifeBridge is all about.